I'm going to mute everybody,
Ah,
but I'm going to be allowing you the provision to unmute yourself. So if I have any questions to ask, and I believe I do, and you would like to propose an answer or ask a follow-up question, you can unmute yourselves, assuming that there's no background noise. Also, today will be the final session at this time in this series of Parsha in 20. I'll thank you in advance for those who have joined previously. Maybe one or two are joining for the first time today. We have connections from Israel even here, I see. Special Shalom Aleichem to Israel, and Bruchim Habayim to everybody. So I am going to mute us now. Also, you did, we sent out this morning a copy of chapter 32, Perek Lamed Bet, which is our topic for exploration this morning. If you have a Chumash handy, or if you have the text that you can access on your screen, or if you printed it out, you might find that to be helpful. I'll try to be as explicit as possible to make it as smooth and as easy for those of you who don't have the text in front of you. But let me read to you the opening paragraph of a moving story which had long-term consequences and could have had a different set of long-term consequences, which might even have changed the course of Jewish history. Chapter 32, Lamed Bet. Umekne Rav Haya Livnei Reuven Livnei Gad Atzum Me'od. A lot of cattle was owned by the children of the tribe of Gad and the children of the tribe of Reuven, actually mentioned in the opposite order right now. And after, so that says that Reuven had cattle, and to Gad. And then it adds another two words, Atzuma'od, exceedingly great. Vayiru at Eretz Yazev at Eretz Gilad. They saw the land of Yazer and the land of Gilad. V'hinei hamakom mikom mikner. And behold, this place, or places that they were looking at, were a mikom mikner, a place for sheep. I'm going to try to share a screen with you to show you a map, just to give you some, just out of curiosity, do you see my pointer going around? Okay. Okay. I had my wife's in the background because even though she's muted, I was able to hear her. So here you see Gilad. This is the land of Gilad. Here's an area labeled Yazer. So those are the two areas that are mentioned. The other context here, you have the nation of Ammon. Down here is Moab. And of course, we're going to be crossing in. Here's the Dead Sea. Here's Yerushalayim. But so the area that we're talking about right now, that Reuven and Gad are talking about, this is the area over here which we recently conquered. Now, let me just go back. Whoops. Sort of the first time I'm doing this, I think. Let me get ourselves back. Let's see. Okay. more or less.
Which Parsha is it?
Okay, we are in the Parsha Matot,
Okay.
and chapter 32 in that Parsha. Okay. So that was the opening verse. We're looking at that northeastern region, and then the account continues. Vayava'u v'nei Gad u'v'nei Reuven, and the children of Gad and the children of Reuven, that means the members of those tribes, came. Vayomeru, and they said to Moshe and to Elazar HaKohen, who was Aaron's successor, the El Nisieh Ha'edah Lemor, and they spoke to the princes of the nation, saying, before we look at what they say, anything you notice that we want to perhaps ask about as a change from the first verse to the second verse? In the first verse, who's mentioned first? Reuven, and then God. And in the second verse, God is mentioned first, and then Reuven. So one of the answers to that question is that Reuven starts out being mentioned first because he was the birth Bechor. He was the firstborn of Yaakov, going back to the original heads of the families for each of the tribes. It has some status in that regard. But we're told, the Ramban definitely brings this down as his viewpoint as well, that really it was the tribe of Gad who were the ringleaders in this whole suggestion that we're going to try to figure out exactly what it was that was on their agenda. So the order is reversed. Initially, we give respect to the firstborn, but then when it comes, and that opening verse is sort of a perspective of the Torah, of the narrator, meaning Hashem. In Pasuk 2, they came, so there's already an action of the human beings coming, and they spoke. So God seemed to be the motivating force to appear before Moshe and Elazar the Kohen and to lead the presentation. Now, what do they say? Pasuk 3, Gimel, Atarot, the Givon, they name a bunch of places, actually 9 places. Atarot and Divon and Yazer we saw on the map, and Nimrah and Cheshbon and El-Aleh, Ushfab, Unevo, Uveon. So those places are mentioned, and then they go on and say, the land which Hashem conquered before the congregation of Israel is an Eretz Mikneh, a land of sheep. She is V'la avadecha Mikneh, and your servants happen to have sheep. Do you guys hear me okay? Because I usually lately I'm putting my headset in and I didn't put it in. I see one thumbs up. You guys, it's okay? All right. So we have 2 changes at least to identify there. On a very technical level, but perhaps actually insightful. When the narrator is presenting what's on the minds of Reuven and Gad, how does that first pasuk refer to the land that these tribes are eyeing? It says Mikom Mikneh, a place of sheep. But when the members of Gad and Reuven make their presentation to Moshe and Elazar, they call it a land of Mikneh. You know, in normal conversation, whether it be in English or in Hebrew, we might not pay so much attention to this change. But the fact that within a very short span of verses, that we have two different references to the same area, possibly, but two different references to what seems to be the topic of conversation, that makes a difference. So the Malbim says that a Mekom Mikneh, the first reference, what makes something a place of sheep? That's when it's being used that way. Other people have already shown the way. They're grazing their sheep in that area. So I know it must be good because I see a lot of people are using it. An Eretz Mikveh is a land, a place that meets the criteria to be something. In this case, a grazing land, but is not being used that way yet. So initially, when Reuven and Gad, says the Malbim in his commentary, when Reuven and Gad scouted out this area that had been recently conquered, they noticed that these areas that I showed you on the map before were being used as grazing lands, and they had a lot of cattle. In fact, you know, some say that God had a lot more. That's when it says at the beginning of the verse that Reuven is mentioned first, and the word Rav, a lot, is mentioned at the end of the verse, closer to the name of God. It says Atzuma, very mighty. As much cattle, as much sheep that Reuven had, God had exceedingly even more than that. And after they started to see that there were people using grazing lands, they did a little bit more exploration, and they realized that there was land not being used, but seemed to have all the qualities, or enough of the qualities, that would make for good grazing land. And so after making that observation, you know, they already prepared for their preparation. They had their own talk amongst one another, but when it came to Moshe and Elazar, they're going to stand before the leaders. So the representatives of these tribes had done more research, so they came with more information, more details, and then they make a declaration. This land that Hashem conquered before the nation of Israel is a land of sheep, and we have sheep. Well, what's going on here? Are they asking anything? You may unmute yourself if you'd like. Is there a question here, or is there a statement here?
I think it's a suggestion. I think they're waiting for someone to offer it to them. I mean, why else would they say it?
Well, who's the someone?
Well, whoever they're talking to, Moshe and the others that they're talking.
So why not just be explicit? You know, I both listened to a presentation and read a book by an author who said that, you know, people are basically good people, and if they can help you out, if they can accommodate what you want, they will. But you have to let them know what it is that you want. They're not going to read your minds. Right. So why don't they just say?
Because they're not supposed to stay on that side. They're supposed to go to the other side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good suggestion. And they're hesitant about saying it. I mean, they understand that maybe something's not totally right about this. We're supposed to be crossing the Jordan into the promised land. So maybe we're not asking exactly the right way. So they didn't want to actually say it themselves. They wanted Moshe to say it. Now, I said they didn't really want to say it themselves, but if you would take a look at the next verse actually starts off and says, verse 5, Vayomru, they said, Imatzanu chen be'einecha, if we have found favor in your eyes, Yutana ta'aretz hazot la'avodecha la'achuzah, let this land be given to your servants as our portion. Al ta'virenu et hayarden. Do not cross us over the Jordan River, that boundary. So you might be saying, Rabbi Yazga, are you making something bigger than it really is? I seem to imply they didn't ask. They just make a statement. But here it is, they did ask. You would be right to ask, but I have an answer to your question. There was a break. There was a break between their initial presentation, where they shared their observation of the grazing land, and they shared the fact that they had sheep that could benefit from this land. And the implication was that this would be a good shidduch. And they would like Moshe to make that shidduch with their tribes and those grazing lands as being their inheritance in the lands that the Jewish people have and would be conquering.
I have a question. Arei Miklat, when is that discussed? Is that before or after this? Because there are going to be 3 Arei Miklat on this side of the Jordan.
Right. So as the psukim go on, actually we've already seen, right? We've already seen in Pasuk Daled 4, they do make, Reuven and Gad representatives do make the point that God has conquered this land. So they're implying that that land is going to be meant for our use. Now,
But
how
also
that use was
3 Arei Miklat there.
Okay, but it's a big place. There'll be room for the Arei Miklat. There could be room for summer vacation properties. Like, that they don't really know what the intention was or how you would use that. They in their minds, I think the Malbim says this also. In their minds, they may have thought everybody has a main portion across the Jordan, but in this area that was recently conquered, that everybody would have some kind of access rights or designated portions, that it would be for the whole nation. And what they're saying is they want to make a land swap. This was already, you see, these concepts of land swaps precede the contemporary scene. They want to swap whatever territory was going to be designated for them to the west of the Jordan River and take their portion here. So no one's going to lose out quantitatively, more or less, and they that they realize, they think that would be fair. But the reason that I said there's a break, we don't know how long the break was. The truth is the break was probably very short, but there was a mental break for sure. As Cherna said, they were not comfortable making the recommendation, making the request that they should have this land swap. They understood that it was something not 100% kosher about it. So they were hoping, if they presented all the facts, that Moshe, who certainly had a great mind, that he would put 1 and 1 together, and he would say, wow, what a great idea. We have other people who need farming land and other people who want beachfront property, and those are in the shipping business, by sea. What a great idea. You take your inland property and we have more of other good property to give out to people. They were hoping that's what Moshe would say. But Moshe gave them the silent treatment. And then Gad and Reuven reps were forced to continue the conversation. I know that because of 2 things. The big clue is that the word Vayomru is repeated. When you look back in the Torah and you see in Pasuk Bet, the second Pasuk says they came and they said, it doesn't repeat the word said again in Pasuk 3 and in Pasuk 4. Once somebody is speaking, that one introductory verb of saying he spoke, she spoke, they spoke is enough to keep going for a long time, as long as it's part of the same speech. So when you have that verb repeated, it means that here it means in the minds of Reuven and Gad, there was a mental break. They thought they finished their part and Moshe would take over. But Moshe gave them the silent treatment and forced them to keep on speaking by his silence. And the second clue to it is that if you look in the printed text of a Chumash, you're going to see a samach there. That Hebrew letter samach indicates a short break. So that if you look in a Torah scroll itself, you'll see a few extra empty spaces there that indicate a break. And Moshe caught them in their ploy. He wasn't going to let them get away with it. You want something? You're going to articulate what you want. And so they continue in Pasuk 5 in saying that if we found favor in your eyes, please give us this land. Do not cross us over the Jordan. Anything else you would ask about this new Pasuk of ours, Pasuk Hey, Pasuk 5? Well, I would ask, why do you need that last phrase? Don't cross us over the Jordan. Just say, we would like this to be our grazing land. Doesn't that mean I won't cross over the Jordan? Any suggestions?
Yeah, crossing over the Jordan was the whole point.
Not for Reuben and Gad.
No, but for the whole 40 years.
So they recognize that that's the goal, but they don't want that, and that's the destination, but they really don't want to be part of that crossover. They want their land swap to eliminate the fact that they should even have to cross over and see the land.
I think this is like an exclamation point.
Right, exclamation points in the Torah are only valid when they make a point. That's what they call an exclamation point. There has to be a message there. And Moshe definitely heard the point. So we'll read a little bit more, and I'm going to leave you hanging with an assignment over Shabbos to read and to think a little bit more deeply. But I believe I will continue it this Shabbos afternoon in the Shia between Mincha and Mariv. So if you're available to attend, you can come and Neder. I'll share more of the exploration. But when Moshe speaks, that's Pasuk Vav 6 and forward, Moshe said, that's not even Elazar that's speaking. It's not Elazar's, the son of Aaron, the priest, who's speaking now. They were both approached. They were near each other, but Moshe is the only one speaking now. And he speaks to the children of God and the children of Reuven. He's speaking to them. He understands what's happening there. He understands that God is the dominant force in this suggestion, and he addresses them in that way. And Moshe says to them, he asks them a question. Ha'achechem yarvou lamilchama? Are you saying that your brethren, the rest of the nation, should be engaged in the battle to conquer the land to the west of the Jordan River? But you're going to stay here while everybody else goes to battle? And Moshe continues, as if that in of itself was not bad enough. Lama tiniyun et lev b'nei Yisrael me'avor el ha'aretz asher natan lehem Hashem. Why should you do something that would discourage the children of Israel from crossing over to the land that God gave them? Is Moshe blowing something out of proportion? Is it possible to really think that after all this time, we would not cross over into the promised land? Well, Moshe thinks it's absolutely a possibility. He would not have thought 38 years ago plus that when he shared God's declaration that it was time to cross into Israel, and then the nation wanted to send scouts / spies, Moshe didn't think that that would happen. And if he even gave that a possibility, he certainly did not imagine that the result would be disastrous. It would basically eliminate the generation who left Egypt from entering the promised land. And in Moshe's mind, the request, if it were to be carried out, that Reuven and Gad not cross the Jordan, that their absence in crossing the Jordan could discourage the entire nation, could motivate a revolt in where we would refuse to march forward. And with good basis, because God were extreme warriors. And that's one of the reasons that they actually came forward as the primary spokesperson and motivating force in this plan. Because the downside to living west of the Jordan, east of the Jordan, is that there would be a small population in a pretty large piece of land. So you wouldn't have the same military support being on the other side, the desert side of the Jordan River. But that didn't bother God because they were warriors. So if the warriors in the nation are saying they're not crossing the Jordan River, it doesn't take too much imagination or too much time for the mill of discussion to ripple through the nation and saying they know something that we don't. If the warriors of God don't want to cross over, it must be that those spies from 38 years ago that Moshe sent in Parsha Shlach, it must be they were onto something. They must have been right about the Eretz Ochelet Yoshveha. There was a land that devoured inhabitants. And who knows, we might never have made it into the promised land if Reuven and God's full proposal made it through. In the end, Moshe, they reached an agreement, and Moshe allots them land. Half of the tribe of Manasseh also gets land. Whether or not that half a tribe of Manasseh was part of the original plan, it has differences of opinion. Some, maybe even most, say yes, they were there from the beginning, but since they're only half a tribe, they're not really given prominence. And at least the Netziv shares the proposal that Manasseh was steeped in Torah and Reuven and Gad were not as steeped in Torah. And Moshe did not want this just to be a commercial area, did not want this just to be a financial decision and a financial community. And so he asked half of Manasseh to be part of this Eastern bank, Eastern settlement, and to make sure that there be Torah throughout the land. But there's a lot of negotiation that takes place. And as you read further into that chapter, whether it be today, tomorrow, over Shabbos, or join me in the Shir Shabbos afternoon, keep your eyes and minds open to the educational process that Moshe implements in response to the proposals and even to the modified proposals and Reuven and Gad. So thank you for joining. And I think you'll have to unmute yourselves right now. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Have a good day. Have a good Shabbos.
Will you be restarting these? The Shabbos, and be safe.
You Shabbos, everybody.
That's true. I'm gonna go.
Shabbos.
Ah, I knew my wife was here.
Rabbi, will you be restarting your Parsha Thursdays?
What's that?
Will you be restarting the Thursday Parshas?
At some point, I will be giving a Parsha class on Thursday mornings. Exactly when that will start, I'm not sure, but the earliest would be sometime after Sukkot. Normally, I start a longer shiur on Thursday mornings. That will continue in some format. So, and this is a Thursday morning. My regular shiur used to be at 10. I even would invite the people that are online now, if you're intending to join me sometime after the Yom Tov season. If you have a preference, like for a 10 o'clock start or 11 o'clock start, you can share that with me, because I will be trying to determine what will work. But I don't have an exact start date yet. Will we start Parsha in 20 before the regular Parsha class? There is somewhat of a possibility, but time will tell. We have to see what we're going to be up to. In some ways, it's a long time away, but in other ways, we're already working on schedules and locations for Rosh Hashanah and Kippur davening, for Sukkot meals, all that. So there's a lot to do before we get up to the continuation of the class.
Okay.
But thanks for joining.
Enjoy your trip.
Hey, Ann, Barbara and Joe, Robert and Fran, Norman, and
Shabbos.
Rebecca.
Hi, Rabbi.
And I can't see somebody else over there. I'm sorry.
Hi, Rabbi. Good Shabbos, Rabbi.
Who's Galaxy? I think he's off. And one of the burgers are on. Wendy.
Raina.
Hi. Okay.
Hi.
Raina, thanks for joining.
Pleasure.
All the way. Who's Galaxy?
You're welcome to
Galaxy.
visit when you come north. If you want to come all the way north to Rochester, you're welcome.
I don't
Well-
think so.
Well, you don't
Where are
know
you
when you're going to be accepted and rejected from day to day,
Yeah.
Well, we're very popular, so I don't think it'll be a problem.
We appreciate
Where are you going?
We appreciate the invitation. And
Where are
I know
you going?
Norman always has an invitation for us.
Anyway, it's only $2,000 if you don't quarantine, so. not a-
Have a good day, everyone.
That's the
Enjoy.
fine.
Have
That's the
a
price
safe
of the
trip.
resident we have to be in.
That's each
Where are
time.
you going?
We hope to drive up to New York. I think we're not allowed to cross into the Connecticut border, so our children have to come to where we'll be staying and have social distancing greetings.
That's for next week or this Shabbos?
At the
No,
beginning of
not yet.
August, we'll be leaving, God
Okay.
willing.
Not yet.
Robert,
Okay, have a good
So you
day.
got a quarantine in
Fran,
New
and
York.
if you see Rav Schechter, send them my regards, please, as well.
All right, you're up there in the mountains.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks
Bye,
for joining
everyone.
again. Have a great day.
Diane, Rebecca, Norman, regards to Gail. and to
Alrighty.
Norman.
Take
Okay,
care.
bye,
Be
everyone.
well.
Bye-bye.
Be safe. Bye-bye.
We're still
Okay, bye,
on.
everyone.
Bye-bye. I'm not able to disconnect so easily today because of this share. Stop share. Oh, that's what I have to do.